I'm Jeffrey Huster from Syntax and you're watching Live Prog.
Hello there, musical friends. Welcome to Live Prog. I am your host, Morpheusz Huster. Are you ready for something new and something different? Although I still very much enjoy making my video reviews of progressive rock albums, I thought it was time to do something new and something different. Something I've been, wanting to do for quite a while. Music that I've been very much interested in. EM, or electronic music. Electronic music and progressive rock are quite closely related. Of course, they have both the synthesizer in common, and there are a lot of bands that cross over the borders to, either genre. So, it's basically, I personally find it a bit of a logical step, to move a little bit more in that area. Especially since for many years, I've been a big fan of the synthesizer sounds in progressive rock. What I'm going to do, and I'm going to start with this special, is bring you, EM video reviews, electronic music video reviews. Now, I have a few reasons for that. If we go back in time, when I was a teenager and had just saved up my money to buy my very first CD player, one of the first CDs I bought was this one. Vangelis Direct. I hope you can see it, it's a little dark. This is one of the oldest albums I have, and I still love this one to this very day. And it would be a number of years later that I would discover progressive rock. So basically I was listening to synthesizer music way before I discovered prog. So one of the reasons why I'd like to go back to that genre and explore it some more, and of course share my, findings with you. The second reason is that I really enjoy my reviews. I enjoy my video reviews and I will keep on bringing them, no worries there. But I've been a reviewer for about 10 years and I've been writing reviews, and I've been, for the past 2 years doing my video reviews of progressive rock albums. And there's a lot of music, but I also know that there are a lot of reviewers out there. So I thought it was time to add something different, something that, has not been done that much as in prog. So hopefully keep Live Prog fresh and interesting. And hopefully you get some new ideas for music, for different kind of music, because there's a lot of electronic music that is very closely related and that is very interesting for progressive rock fans. But of course I also hope that my EM reviews will be interesting enough for the real die-hard EM fans who know probably much more about it than I do. So I'm going to have a challenge to bring very informative and entertaining reviews. Well, I'm gonna do my best for that. And then I have a third reason, and that has to do with the equipment you see behind me, and this is only a little bit, because I am sitting here in the Dream Studio, which is home of Syntax, a synthesizer musician. Well, what do you know? He's here! The man himself, Mr. Syntax! Jeffrey Huster.
Hello.
Hello! So, what do you do?
I make synthesizer music.
Well, you heard it from him. Now, there's a chance you already heard some of his music, and otherwise, just look at synth.nl and you will find a lot more music from this young man here who has a promising future as a musician. Now, this is my introduction. I'm gonna bring you some more music, but first let's get you in the mood with a progressive rock artist who's also a very fine EM artist. A good friend of mine, Mr. Eric Norlander. Live from Gettysburg, this is Neurosar. Welcome back! I am your host here at Live Prog and you are watching the EM special. I hope you enjoyed that track by Eric Norlander. Now, as you can see, I made a little display here of CDs. All of these albums are related to EM music, and some of them are also linked very deeply into progressive rock. You probably see a lot of well-known names, and we'll go into detail a little more. Let's go back to Eric Norlander. The track you just heard, Neurosar, comes from this album, Threshold, which was released in 1996. And this is the solo debut album of Eric Norlander. On this album he played electronic compositions. Not a rock album, although there is a human percussionist also present on the album. But if we take a little step forward to 2004, then we have this album, Seas of Orion. In 2001, Eric Norlander came to Holland and played on the Alpha Centauri festival. Now, EM fans will probably know that festival. So he played there, and 3 years later in 2004 he returned and he headlined the festival. And well, on that festival this album was released, Seas of Orion, which is a fully EM album. Again, he added a little human touch to it again with percussionist Greg Ellis, who also plays on this album. But apart from that, it is fully synthesizer music. Now, this album is definitely one of my favorite albums from Eric Norlander. Centers around one track, which is called, it's a beautiful name, Adrift on the Fire Seas of Orion's Shield. Now, that long track, 22 minutes, features his very impressive 1967 Moog modular system. Now, I have seen that in real life in action and it's really impressive. It's been called the Wall of Doom for many years already. And that long track, Eric said that he was very much influenced by Klaus Schulze and Tangerine Dream, and he wanted to create something out of the box. He was kind of wanted to step out away from the song structured music and really let his imagination go free. It took him a couple of tries to really come up with this track, but once he was in the zone, he really made something beautiful of it. And now, of course, you can create a lot of sounds with analog synthesizers and especially wind, but he did an extra effort to fully program his modular Moog system to create this really beautiful wind sounds. There's long sequences on this album, there's this droning sounds, and well, it's a really fantastic piece. And after a couple of minutes, the melodies come in and they're really hypnotic melodies, and I gotta say I really love that stuff. The other tracks are a bit shorter. The most rocky one is the opening track from Far for Absent Friends, and I gotta be honest, I absolutely love that track. It's one of my favorite tracks from Eric Norlander. There are a lot of sequences on this album. He uses his full array of instruments on this one, and especially, I mentioned a couple of times, the Moog modular system is used to its full extent on this album. So I say it is a must-have for EM fans. If you don't have it, if you're not familiar with Eric Norlander, I really suggest you check out this album. Now, it was released in 2004 on the label Quantum Records. I must say I have no idea if the label still exists, but well, let's hope it does, and let's hope you can have a listen to it as well. There's one cover on this album, Opera Sauvage Hymn from Vangelis, which Eric gives his personal interpretation of. Very interesting to listen to. Now, while we're on the subject of Eric Norlander, he also released the Galactic Collective, which features most of his instrumental songs, but it is in a rock setting, so there are drums, guitars, bass, and occasional vocalists with it. But he also made a nice DVD, this one. Here you have him and the other guys from the band performing the songs in the studio with a lot of close-ups and detail on the instruments. But what is absolutely fantastic, especially for EM fans that love to know more about the instruments, there's a 22-minute documentary included where Eric really goes into detail on his Moog modular system. You really get a good look at it. He explains a lot of things, but he also tells a lot about the other synthesizers that he uses. Now, it's very much worth looking. So, keep it in mind, Eric Norlander, The Galactic Collective, the Definitive Edition DVD. And if you like that live track, well, check out this one as well, because, well, there you find a lot more. This is a real live concert, so again, the same songs with a little more from the Galactic Collective, but then in a live setting. Okay, so from the prog side to EM, Eric Norlander kind of makes a bridge. But also from the other side, from the EM to the prog side, there's also an interesting band that makes a nice bridge. That band is related to this band, Tangerine Dream, of which he is a part of, at least in the last few years. But the band he formed is called Picture Palace Music. Now, I have seen them live on stage and they really impressed me. It was fantastic to see. And you know, 11 musicians on stage. Well, that alone is impressive, but also the array of instruments they have. Well, the album I have of them is called Midsummer, and it's this one. I gotta say, this is a nice album for people who are not that much into EM, but more into prog. I would recommend listening to Picture Palace Music. The main man who founded this is Thorsten Questioning, and he gathered around him well, a lot of great musicians. They don't just all play keyboards. In fact, they're basically two keyboard players in the band, but they also have a couple of guitar players, they have a couple of drummers, and there's one guy who plays an instrument that you really need to see. And you can see it when you go to a Picture Palace Music show. They are called sound stones. Now, that is something really impressive, and they are used on a couple of tracks on this album, and that creates such a unique atmosphere, and that is something I really like. I took out the inlay because this album, Midsummer by Picture Palace Music, offers a lot of variety and a lot of interesting songs. Now, I mentioned 11 people officially form Picture Palace Music. They're all listed on the website and I saw them on stage, but on the album not all 11 play on each track. Just a couple of musicians play here and there. The 11 form the live band. The first few tracks are a mixture of EM and rock. There's a lot of nice guitar work in it, sometimes some crunchy guitar work in it, yet very spacey keys. The whole album is very melodic, very accessible, and I really must say it's well, I love to listen to it very much. I can listen to it all day and absolutely won't get bored of it. But if we come to the third track, Midsummer's Morning, and there we have Thorsten Questioning doing piano, well, and some synthesizer of course, but mainly piano. It's a lot of piano-based song, and Jürgen Heidemann does the sound stone, and that is the first track that you really hear this instrument. And when you listen to that, it's a very calm and quiet song, very atmospheric, but you know that soundstone makes such a unique well, sound that well, that is something you really need to see. And I hope that these guys, well, maybe give out a DVD someday that you can see it. But if you have a chance, see them live. It's a real happening, absolutely. They use a lot of vocoders in it as well, give it well, a spacey sound, and there's a lot of variety, as I mentioned. Sometimes it's real synthesizer sounds, synthesizer music, but sometimes it's more rock music, sometimes even a bit poppy, and sometimes a little bit more experimental. Drowning Someone's Sorrow into the Ocean, it's a sort of a suite. It consists of a couple of parts, which is again done by Thorsten Questioning and Jürgen Heidemann. And again, a lot of sound stones, but also an instrument called boomwhackers. And I gotta say, I haven't seen it, so well, I'm very curious. But altogether, it sounds really fantastic, and I really think that well, if I appeal to the prog fans that normally watch my video reviews, then I would certainly say Picture Palace Music is absolutely highly recommended, because it appeals also more to the rock side of music. At the same time, you know, well, it's not really EM. It covers a lot of genres, but it mixes it all together, makes it a very interesting and very pleasurable album to listen to. And well, in my opinion, you know, if you like what you hear, if you enjoy the music you listen to, it's a good album. In this case, definitely a good album. Picture Palace Music Midsummer. Another band that kind of forms a little bit of a bridge between progressive rock and EM, although they more lean to the EM side, at least, well, that's how I experienced the album, is Morpheusz. And here we have one of their albums, at least the one I have, Days of Delirium and Nocturnal Nightmares. Now, a dark sound, and also if you look at the artwork, also on the back side and the cover, you know, you see a little bit dark. And well, if I listen to, you know, if I look at the titles, Between the Barriers of Reality, Prophecies of a Pagan, Sandman's Journey Through Sanity, it kind of gives you a direction of the album. Nevertheless, this is not a really dark album, it's not a really heavy album, although Prophecies of a Pagan, which is a song that really stood out for me, I really enjoyed that. The first half of the song is like you're watching a scary movie, a ghost movie or something. And the song really builds up, and I gotta say, I really like that. You really hear it moving towards a sort of a climax. Now, Morpheusz, as I say, is a band consisting of 4 people. Ron Boots, Frank Doritke, Erik van der Heijden and Harold van der Heijden. 2 keyboard players, 1 guitar player and 1 drummer. Although Frank Doritke also plays keyboards in this one, but he is the guitar player. He also has his own band called the FD Project. Well, and with Ron Boots, we have a name that is very important to EM music, well, especially in the Netherlands, but you know, in EM in general. First of all, he is an accomplished musician. He has released a lot of albums. Well, been active as a musician since the 80s. And aside from that, he also runs Groove Unlimited, which is, well, a large label with a lot of EM music. So groove.nl is the website, and well, if you want to really dive into EM and you want to look for music, that's the place to be. Now, of course, on that label, this one is also released on 2010. 6 tracks, and fairly long tracks with more complex song structures. The first 4 tracks range between 10 and 14 minutes, and the other tracks are around 7. Now, long tracks are no exception in EM. In Prog, you know, you have the epic, and everybody hopes it's interesting and not boring and not repeating itself. With EM, there's a lot of long tracks because, well, especially this kind of music is less bound by the song idea. It's more soundscapes. Although in this case, it's a little bit of a mixture. It's not there are not a lot of endless sequences, but there are nice sequences. I really enjoy that. There are good melodies. There's a nice rhythm in it. Of course, Harold van der Heijden and also Frank Doritke, well, kind of bring in the rhythm. And what I like is when you hear these nice sequences and these, you know, spacey synthesizer sounds, and then on top of that you have this beautiful guitar play by Frank Doritke. I really like that. So again, you know, moving a little bit more into EM, then this one, Morpheusz, Days of Delirium and Nocturnal Nightmares, is very much recommended. Hey there, I am your host Marcel Hasser, and you are watching the introduction to EM on Live Prog. I hope you're enjoying the music. Now, let's go back to Mr. Ron Boots. I mentioned, you know, he's very important to especially the Dutch EM scene. In April 2012, I attended the E-Day festival, and I was browsing and listening to the music and looking at some CD stands, and I wanted to buy a solo album by Ron Boats, because I know he had a lot, and I heard the Morpheusz album, but I wanted to have one of his, and I gotta say, I found it very difficult to choose from. So I picked one of the more recent albums from him, this one, with a little bit of a difficult name because it's Spanish, La Caída de Hormigón. As you can see, very atmospheric picture of a castle, well, castle, more of a ruin. And that brings immediately the theme of the album. The story of this album is that ancient things, like ruins, have a story to tell, and there's something we can learn from it. Now, in about an hour time, in 3 tracks, Ron takes you on a magical journey. You know, beautiful soundscapes, a lot of nice, soft sequences, gentle melodies, but also more symphonic parts. Nothing overly heavy. This is an album that you can really relax with. That is one of the things I really enjoy about EM. I mean, there's a lot of sequenced music that's more upbeat and up-tempo, but there's also a lot of music that is really calming and soothing and gentle. And this is one of them. And it's really beautiful to see how Ron takes his time to let the music speak. And this is an album, you know, you can, you know, just lie down, close your eyes and listen to it. And when I was listening to this album, one of the things I noticed is how well it's mixed. There's a lot of detail in the music. You have this sequence, you know, this soft, sometimes the wind. On top of it, there's this melody, also very gentle, but in the background, you also hear all kinds of sounds and effects and things. So it's really fantastic and multi-layered music, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. Now, in the past albums that I presented to you in this introduction special, I mentioned, you know, they're closely related between prog and EM. Well, you can completely forget about the prog on this one. You can completely forget about the rock elements on this one. This is pure electronic music. This is the synthesizer music that I really come to enjoy very much. It is new to me, and I'm in a rock state of mind, and I'm moving on to a more open mind, not bound by, you know, a song structure, but more like soundscapes, and just enjoy the beauty of the sounds that the musician creates. And in this case, Ron Boats, and I gotta say, he's doing it very well. Sometimes I hear a bit things that remind me of Jean-Michel Jarre, you know, the sequence things and the melodic things, but Ron has his own style, and I gotta say, I really enjoy this album. So this is something, you know, if you really want to go into the more synthesizer music, this is a nice one to check out. Ron Boats, La Caída de Hormigón. So far what I've noticed is that Germany is a very important country in EM music. There's a fairly large EM scene there, in other countries as well, but not as large as in Germany. Nevertheless, just as with rock, electronic music is all around us, all over the world, and from all different kind of countries. Now, we had a couple of albums from Germany and Holland. Let's move to a different country with a very beautiful album that I really enjoyed. We're going to Turkey, and the album I have is from a man called Can Attila, and the album is called High Story or History. A really interesting album. When I listen to it, immediately my frame of reference would be Jean-Michel Jarre. Now, of course, you have in rock and EM, you have the same. You have a couple of standard bands, and often music has a kind of similar sound, so it's often compared to that. However, Can Attila absolutely has an own identity, an own kind of sound, although generally, you know, it's related to the music Jean-Michel Jarre makes. What I like a lot about him is that he brings, of course, the Turkish, the Oriental influences in the music. Now, I tried to look up his website to know more about him because, well, I only have this and this music. Unfortunately, his website is completely in Turkish, so I couldn't really find anything about him. So, well, unfortunately, I can't tell you a little more about his backgrounds. Nevertheless, I do know that with High Story, he really makes a very beautiful album. The tracks are shorter, and it's a very accessible album, very melodic, very up-tempo, and very enjoyable to listen to. I really like this album very much, especially because of the Oriental influences in it. What you hear especially in track number 4, for example, Sultan Sequencer. You know, the title is a bit of a giveaway, but also Thieves of Baghdad has that in it. So very nice. Well, this is the back side, and here you have the cover. Well, there's not much I can tell you about it, but definitely worth checking out. It's a very nice album, very beautiful music, and I really enjoyed it. We're going back to Holland because the last album I want to present to you is again from a Dutch musician, synth.nl. And this is the album Apollo, which is his 4th album. I really enjoyed this one. I had the pleasure of meeting the man behind synth.nl, Michel van Oosterbruggen. I visited his studio and I saw firsthand where he created all this beautiful music, and I noticed that he's very much interested and inspired by space. Now, of course, Apollo deals with the Apollo mission, but not just one, a couple of them. And just looking at the tracks, I know which ones. Apollo 7, Apollo 8, Apollo 9, Apollo 11 and Apollo 13. We open with Launchpad, and we close the album, the last 2 tracks, Re-Entry and Splashdown. So basically from, you know, taking off into space and coming back to Earth, that is what synth.nl brings you in a musical form on this album. Very upbeat music, very up-tempo, in the vein of Jean-Michel Jarre. I love the nice bass sounds in it, you know, it gives it body, it gives it a warm sound. I like to build up, and what I especially enjoy about this album is that there are a lot of original NASA recordings used on the tracks. You know, from the whole taking off part, but also communications between Houston and the Apollo missions. Very interesting, very nice. There's one aspect that also is highlighted on this album, and that's the one track that really stands out. It's called Earthrise, and you get the picture, of course, you know, because when you're on the moon and then you see the Earth, and that gives you a whole different perspective on the planet, and therefore that track really stands out musically. It's a very atmospheric, gentle song. Very nice, very beautiful, and you know, it gives you a moment to reflect. It's very nice that he included that. Now, of course, the artwork is all about the moon landings, you know, the Apollo missions. So very, very nice, very beautiful. I really enjoy this album very much. Very highly recommend it. Of course, I recommend all albums for the simple reason that I personally really enjoy listening to them. Now, as I mentioned, I have here this whole display. Now, of course, I highlighted a couple of artists like Eric Norlander. The ones you see here are the ones I discussed. I mentioned Vangelis, but I mentioned Tangerine Dream as well. Now, of course, Rick Wakeman also falls a little bit in that category because especially The Six Wives of Henry VIII is a fully instrumental, fully done with keyboards. And of course, he has some backing musicians to help him out with the music, but nevertheless, it is very electronic based. I mentioned Tangerine Dream. Jan Hammer, I only have, unfortunately, well, maybe the cheesy one, the Miami Vice one. I mean, Jan Hammer did more than that, but still, you know, it is very nice synthesizer music. Kraftwerk, Kitaro are familiar names. less familiar will be Misha. You know, this is just a musician that my son found on the internet, and he makes really nice music. Just in his home, releasing it by himself, but it's very nice music. A man I had a pleasure of meeting, Mr. Steve Dinsdale. I have to show you this one a little bit more. Tron Legacy. I got the movie and I loved the music so much that we got the album, or at least my son got it, it's his copy. Tron Legacy by Daft Punk is EM. It's electronic music and it's really good, fantastic album to listen to. But also more known is of course The Art of Noise, which is again more poppy and more experimental, but it's electronic music. Maybe not so known to a lot of EM, but very known to a lot of prog fans is Richard Barberi, the keyboard player from Porcupine Tree, who also has a very beautiful and very atmospheric album out. Well, Enigma, Tomita, Michael Shipway. Well, I think I covered everything I have here, and there is a lot more. Trust me, there's a lot more, and I'm discovering more musicians and more bands, well, almost every day. Hopefully, I'm going to bring you some really interesting reviews. This was my introduction to EM. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to try out my first real EM video review quite soon, so stay tuned for that. A little bit of self-promotion if you don't mind. If you are a musician or a label and you would like your album to be reviewed by me on LiveProg, well, check out liveprog.com for the details, and hopefully we get to see your album and your music on liveprog.com and LiveProg TV. So, well, thank you for listening, and I can only say enjoy the music. See you next time on LiveProg.